hello there! Look, behind you! Turn your device so you can see me. Hello, that's better. Hello there. My name is Stuart, known to some as the Pear Bear, but you can call me by my Viking name, which is Fastulf. It means stern wolf. But don't worry, I'm actually quite lovely. Thank you for joining us on this 360-degree virtual tour of the Jorvik Viking Centre. You can use your device to look wherever you like as we go around on the tour. If you're watching on a computer, use the arrow keys to move the camera. That's right, we're going to meet some interesting people and learn a little bit about how they lived their lives. Now look straight ahead so we don't crash.
Kom hit. Välkommen Leon.
Oh, well, that was very nice of him. He just said "Willkommen," which is welcome in Old Norse. That's the language the Vikings would have spoken, Old Norse. A very important language. 1 in 7 of the words that we use today are derived from Old Norse. You're going to hear that and many more languages as we travel around. Now, look over here on our right. You can see there's been a bit of an accident. A house fire. Yes, that happens when your city is made primarily of wood. Yes, there are no bricks, there's no concrete in the 10th century. No, and there's no Viking fire brigade either, unfortunately. Now then, everything we're going to see is based on an archaeological excavation that took place in this part of the city of Jorvik in 1976 to 1981. Thousands of objects were found from all over the world. In fact, if you look just to your left there, that chap kneeling down is a travelling merchant from a place called Samarkand, which is modern-day Uzbekistan to you and me. That man there on the left with the long hair, he's a slave trader. Yes, the Vikings traded in slaves, as they called them thralls. It's an awful part of history, but it's very important to acknowledge that it did happen. Thankfully, not a huge amount of evidence for it happening here in the city of Jorvik, but around the rest of the world, plenty of evidence, manacles, things like that. Now, ahead of us here, we have Sigurd. He's an antler worker. Antler from deer is very useful. It's dense, it can be made into needles, pins, and even combs. I've got a comb here. We found hundreds of examples of combs during the excavation, some of them very highly decorated, as much a status symbol as they were something for keeping yourself clean. Clean, you're probably thinking. Have I gone mad? No, the Vikings were a very, very clean people. They even had a special day of the week for washing. It's called Lørdag, or Wash Day is what they would have called it. You and me would call it Saturday. Yes, that's the day of the week that you wash all of your clothes and yourself so that you smell nice and look good for the week ahead. Yes. Compare that to the Anglians who lived in this part of the world alongside the Vikings, only washing themselves about twice a year, and you can probably understand why Anglian writings complain about Vikings coming over here and stealing all of the women, because they look so nice and smell so great. On the subject of things that smell bad, though, if you look down just in front of you there, those furry things in that pen, those are pigs. Yes, they look a lot different to modern pigs, and that's because 1,000 years ago, pigs were a lot smaller and had longer snouts. These are Viking dustbins. You can throw all of your rubbish to them and they'll eat them. The best thing about it is as well, is that once your bin's full, you can eat it. Yes, and that's probably what Grummy, our blacksmith here on the right, is sharpening his whetstone, getting ready to start cooking some dinner. A blacksmith is very important to a 10th century city like Jorvik. Their nails hold the city together, and their tools allow people to engage in all of the crafts that they would have been taking part in. In fact, talking about crafts, if you look just ahead of us here, this is our wood turner, our cup maker, and he's very important. In fact, the name Coppergate derives from the Old Norse word Koppragata, meaning the street of the cup makers. We found hundreds of cups and bowls and all of the associated waste that goes with them being produced in large numbers. Koppragata, the street of the cup makers, yes. Now, over here on the left, you can see a couple of builders. Yes, they're having a break. Nothing's changed in 1,000 years, has it? They are in the middle of building that timber house you can see behind them. Now, houses in the Viking city of Jorvik would have been made either of wattle and daub, or they would have been made of thick timber. Most Viking houses would have only had a single room with a central hearth to provide light and heat. The roof would have been made of reed or straw thatch, with holes at the gable ends that acted as holes to release the smoke from the fire. There are no chimneys at this time. In fact, very few buildings would have been made of stone, only the really important ones, things like churches and royal residences. Ahead of us here, we can see a family engaging in a game of Nevertaffel. Think of it like Viking chess. And we know it was very popular because hundreds of gaming pieces were found during the excavation. In fact, we even found a gaming board carved into the inside of a coffin lid. Yes, let's just hope that was carved before the coffin was filled. Now then, we are here arriving on the wharf side. This would have been a very important area of the city. This is where the River Foss would have run through. The Vikings were very talented sailors and also very canny shipbuilders. Their ships had a shallow draft, which would not only allow them to sail the oceans, but also to sail right up the rivers. And we know that the city of Jorvik, based on what we found during the excavation, was connected to trade routes all the way around the world, goods coming in from all over the place. This chap here with the blonde hair, that's Eamon. His face is based on a facial reconstruction of an early medieval skull that was found not far from here. His face, have a good look at it, is about as close as you'll ever get to seeing a real Viking's face. Yes, it's incredible some of the things that have been found. Now then, as you look down to the right, just in front of us here, you can see that the soil there is stained red. Don't worry, that's not blood, that's dye. For you see, cloth dyeing is taking place in this area. If you look right here on the wicker fence, you can see the scraps of cloth in different colours. Wow, they're bright, I bet you're thinking. Well, the Vikings, we loved bright colours. They are a way to show off how much money you've got, because all the dyes that would have been used were from natural products, things that grow naturally, yes? And of course, the further away an item had to travel, the more expensive and more exotic it would be. So colours like blue, very expensive, and the most expensive colour of all, purple. Yes, that's why it's associated with royalty, you see, because to dye something purple would cost huge amounts of money. Here we are heading inside one of those Viking timber houses I was talking about earlier. The advantage to a timber house as opposed to a wattle and daub house is it's a lot stronger, so it can support lower levels. Look down and forward and you can see that there is a cellar, and that would be used for storage, and that would allow you more space for your living area, your single room that you live in. Now, of course, if you're very wealthy, your house might have separate sleeping alcoves covered with furs and rugs to keep you warm in the night. But most houses would at the very least have had an earthenwork bench covered in wood, then covered in furs. Think of it like a Viking sofa bed. You can sit on it during the day and then sleep on it at night, away from the damp floor. Yes. Now then, here on our left, just in front of us, we can see this lady is weaving material on a loom. And this is how all clothes were made in the 10th century. Yes, it's a very long process. There are no factories, no mass production. So most people would only own one or maybe two sets of clothing, much repaired and passed down through the generations. And that, in fact, would not really change for another 800 years, not until the Industrial Revolution comes along. Now then, my friends, I hope you're in the mood to do a spot of shopping, because we are now heading out onto the main high street of Koppergata, Street of the Cupmakers. Here we have a man selling pots, and just ahead of us now, with the dark hair and the dark tunic there, is Maud the Leather Worker. He's got shoes and belts and pouches, all sorts of things. And all of these are based on what was found during the archaeological dig. Now, normally, over the course of 1,000 years, natural materials like leather and, of course, wood would have rotted away to nothing. But we're very lucky, for in this area of the city of Jorvik, the soil is special. And it means that things that would normally rot away are preserved beautifully. And it has allowed us this amazing window into the past, to what life was like 1,000 years ago. You're going to hear many people speaking many different languages. See if you can spot them. We've got Old English, Old Norse, Old Irish, Middle Welsh, Latin, even Sogdian. That's the language that our Samarkand trader would have been speaking right back at the start. Now, over here on our right, this lady is called Leoba. She's the lady in the blue dress. She is based on a reconstruction of a skeleton that was found during the archaeological excavation. The people who study bones are called osteoarchaeologists, and they're very, very clever people. They can tell where you came from, what job you did, what food you ate, and of course, if you had any illnesses. Now, Leoba's skeleton showed severe damage to one of her hips, which is why we've given her a stick in our reconstruction, because we know she wouldn't have been able to walk without the help of one. Human remains are always treated with the greatest of respect by our osteoarchaeologists. Now, talking about great respect, this scene is a little more sombre, for we have now entered a priest's house. The person on the bed is near the end of their life. They're dying, I'm afraid to say, and they're now being read the last rites by that priest. Now, life expectancy in the 10th century was much lower than it is today. In fact, you could probably only expect to live to about the age of 40, maybe 50. And that's mostly due to the lack of medicine 1,000 years ago. Things that we take a pill for today would be something that could kill our Viking. Yes. You're probably also thinking, hang on a minute, priest? What about Odin and Thor and whatnot? Well, in the 10th century, the Vikings living in this area of the world would most likely have converted to Christianity. And so Christianity is the dominant religion in this city at that time. Here we are now, moving into the back garden. It's a very different sight to a back garden that you and me would have. No flower beds at all. No. Think of this like a waste pit. In fact, if you look down and to the right there, you can see a barrel that's being used for offcuts. Just, my friends, be glad that you can't smell what I'm smelling. You see, the 10th century city of Jorvik, by modern standards, would have been absolutely disgusting. The smell of rotting meat, animal carcasses, animal dung, ammonia from tanning, which is the process of turning skin into leather. All of these horrible smells would have been with you at every moment of every day. And talking about horrible smells, up ahead of us now, just on our left, that's Bogar. He's having a poo. Yes, I know. Hilarious. But also very interesting. For you see, not far down the road, York Archaeological Trust discovered the world's largest Paleo Feces. That's fossilised poo to you and me. Paleoscutologists, that's a real job, they study ancient poo. Those people have managed to discover that the person who delivered this fossilised poo was male, ate mainly bread and meat, and was riddled with intestinal worms and the eggs of parasites. Now, if you look back in front of you, there we can see Ragnar. He is a skald. Now, a skald is a Viking storyteller. Yes, it's him who's going to be keeping the stories of the gods alive. Thor and Jormungandr, who's not a god actually, that's a monster, but it's a brilliant story, look into it. Gods like Odin and Freya. Ah, yes, he's the one who will be keeping those stories alive. Very much like the York Archaeological Trust is trying to keep the history of the Vikings alive with the research that's going on, has been going on since the 1970s. Our research continues into the future. For everything that we know about the Vikings, we know that there is more to learn. Join us in our research, explore our website, click on our Meet the Vikings videos, and thank you for joining us on this tour of the Viking Centre. Goodbye.